Brandon. Hold on.
Hello.
Hold on 1 second. We're in the queue. We're ready to start the stream soon. But I need some music. If I don't listen to this music before we start this whole thing, I just doesn't feel right. Let me. There we go. Put on a little bit of that queue music there. Wait for everyone to show up. So Brandon,
Yeah.
we got about 6 minutes here or so before the show starts. And I'd like to bring up a subject that's been grinding my gears.
Grinding your gears. Okay.
Yeah. You ever go to the movie theater? You know what that is?
Yeah. Sometimes the cinema.
Yeah, okay. You ever go to like a Regal theater?
That's more of a California thing. We have my mother-in-law has bought us gift cards, but we don't go.
All right. You ever see one of these things before a movie starts where somebody comes out and says, "We are this person and that person, and we hope you enjoy our film." And it's a
Yes.
fucking commercial.
Yes.
You ever see that? It's like the worst, like made for Lifetime Hallmark special version of it. It's not even a good commercial. Like there's nothing
No,
to
not
it.
at all.
It's like they're in the world's like chintziest, nicest theater, and everyone's having a great time. And I'm like, this isn't a film.
Yeah.
This isn't a film.
No.
Elizabeth Banks came out. She's not having a good week, Brandon.
No.
She came out last night before this movie. She's like, I'm Elizabeth Banks. Not support. No, you know what? I take that back. It was Olivia Wilde. Look, Elizabeth Banks is having such a bad week. I just threw her under the bus. She wasn't even there. Corrected myself, though. Pretty good here. So, Olivia Wilde, you remember her from
Yep.
Tron, right? She was in Tron.
Yeah, and like a comedy with Ryan Reynolds, I think.
She directed a couple cool movies. I haven't seen them yet, but I hear they're good. So she comes out and says, "I'm Olivia Wilde, and I support these filmmakers." And it's fucking dumbass commercial. You know, like just two people going to the theater, and they're like, "I love refreshments." You know what? I can't even tell you what happened because this time I closed my eyes. This time I refuse to watch it. They're not films, Brandon.
No.
They're films in the way that this isn't really a commercial. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, it says shop sketch craft. I don't sell nothing, Brandon. You know?
No.
I barely sell myself. I'm not a good filmmaker.
and you are relatively cheap, so
I'm very cheap. You know what I had for
Yes.
breakfast?
nothing.
Apple and peanut butter. I know, right? I know.
I meant cheap as in you are affordable, not as in
Oh. You know what I got you for Christmas?
nothing.
Nothing.
Well, you would have got me something, but you took it away. Which I still think I should get it because then I can create multiple profiles. But you know.
Oh, I offered to get Brandon and his wife Disney Plus for her birthday. He told me they already had Disney Plus. So
We don't have it already.
told me-
I'm on someone else's account.
you told me you had it. You told me you had Disney Plus. People are wondering, is this the show now? Do you just talk over music and throw up an ad? No.
This is it. This is it.
This is it. This is the show. This is what we do now. Someone else asked me, Brandon, they go, "Are you ever going to stream art again?" I'm like, yeah.
One day.
So I was like, you know what? I guess it's time to do that thing where we stream the art.
Mm-hmm.
We still got 3 minutes. Damn. I thought that would have done it. I love this piece of music. It's Game Cave music.
Mm-hmm.
My buddy Shinabalaba, he did this.
Is that really his name?
Yeah, Shinababula. He's an eccentric dude, but super fucking talented. It's got a weird name. He does these great like off the cuff jazz renditions of like NES tunes and stuff.
Okay.
And then he just like in the middle of it, like he'll be like playing like footage from Link to the Past, and he'll just be riffing the tunes live on the keyboard, and then he'll just break into like in pixel retro form, like Michael Jackson music in the middle of it, and then it goes right back into Link. And you're like, that fits. It really fits.
So he's that talented that he makes it work.
Yeah, he's super, dude. This music's awesome. This is supposed to be like it speeds up because he has to put that little jazz riff on there, which is cool. But it's supposed to be like just hanging out at the game cave place, at the store. You know.
That's where everybody wants to be.
That's where I'd rather be. I'd rather be there than here.
Me too. Wait, unless you're there, then.
You know what I don't want to be? I don't want to be trapped in the movie theater watching films, which are really just shitty Hallmark style commercials. I mean, you like those Hallmark movies? Like, there's one coming out where it's like a knight just appears. You know what I mean? And teaches some chick, some hot chick, the meaning of Christmas. Hot chick, they're gonna make you a misogynist. No, I don't know her name, man. I wish it were reversed, like some like Brienne of Tarth, brutal like Viking warrior chick shows up and then teaches like me the meaning of Christmas.
Yeah.
These were our pagan rituals, you know, and then like just abuses me, takes me as her manslave back to the hut. Or Brandon makes a bunch of little megatators. Speaking of which, we gotta make some merch. We need some mega potato merch, don't you think? Some shirts.
I think so. You know me, I'm a narcissist. I'm cool with that. Yeah.
Put some of those roughies on shirt form so you can just wear blob roughies. I think they'd work as shirts, those stupid little blobs I do.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. The Megatator characters.
It's the one thing I learned about making t-shirts is make your art dumb. Just dumb it down. People will wear it. It's okay, folks, we're ready to start the stream here. It's 37 seconds.
The five.
We already lost 2 people. I've been watching the numbers. It's funny. They're like, oh, that's what this shit is?
Is that what the red number 2 means, or does that mean 2 people are in here?
Oh, well, you're one of them, and I'm one of them. We had 2 other people, but they left. All right, Brandon, we're gonna get out of here. Ready?
Yeah, come back.
Let's go do it. Real-time art, my ass. I gotta get a new intro, Brandon. Every time we do this, I'm like, I gotta get a new intro.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, it's not real-time art. I gotta fix that. Okay, so in my defense, over the past year, I've changed everything on this channel like twice. Right, Brandon?
Yes.
Brandon's just the guy that just stands behind me like the hype guy. What was that Key and Peele? Where he's like, yeah!
Nice.
Yeah! And then he shot him like Steinbeck style at the end of the took him to the park. So look out, Brandon. If I ever want to take you to the park, you know what's coming. Sketch. Things get dark early in the morning around here, right?
Yeah, they do.
The earlier we do this, the darker my humor is.
Grumpier I am.
What are we doing? What are we doing here, Brandon? We're going to do commentary. You can turn the volume off on your end so I don't have to hear it. We're going to do commentary for this final piece of colored art. Here it is for Wulverblade. So I'm going to start that up. I'm going to open up. Here's the actual piece. The final thing we're going to get to. And this, the only thing I didn't record was this color roughing. This is my rough little like color guide. I kind of want to do something like this, but not bad. That eventually becomes this. So, Brandon, word to remind, you don't have to talk fast. We're going to be here a while. So when I'm like, you got any questions? And then you go, you know,
that is an actual perfect representation of how I talk.
That's exactly. If I did it, Jess would laugh. She kind of laughs at everything. So I don't know. She'd go, and then when I walked out the door, she'd be like, I don't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, she doesn't. It's just like when she listens to songs. I'm like, you even know what they're saying? She goes, no, I just like the beats. I'm like, all right.
You got the beat. Oh, I don't want to get taken off. All right, ready? I'm going to hit play. Here we go. So this is sped up 4 times. And unlike the last video, I did not edit all the small parts out, like the delays. So if we hit a delay, I'm just gonna hit the forward key, a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Like I can hit the forward key there. It's funny, I started drawing and then I immediately stopped. So what happens when this happens? Here's the reality of being an artist. This is usually when my dog comes in and immediately decided that since I started working, she wanted to be let out. All right.
That's usually how it goes.
Yeah. So then I come right back and get to work. So what you're seeing here is me creating a selection flat for this piece of art. And that's where I take a solid color, generally annoying, uh, neon colors, neonish colors I would normally color with, and I use those. So I try not to overdo it. I just do the areas I want to select consistently when I'm airbrushing. So you want to think about it like, like a multi-plane camera, Brandon. You ever hear that in Disney where they have like multi-planes?
Yeah.
Like just the planes you want to be able to airbrush. Like see how like there's that leg right there, right here. There's this leg and
Hmm.
the arm. Like if you really needed to, if you were going to consistently airbrush behind it, you could separate that out. But you don't want to make a selection flat out of every little thing because it's just overkill. I'm gonna have to do a bit of that anyway when I do what I do now is if I really want those individual pieces, I do my color flats separately, which you'll see, and I can always select those. So first thing I do is I use a lasso tool, and then I have to. This is a little trick. You have to fill the color to the edge of the line. So sorry, I'll go back. Um, so what that means is okay, well, first I have to separate. That's what I'm doing. I'm separating him. See how he's pink? You'll see. He's pink now.
Right.
So you want to make sure that selection flat goes just about to the edge of your black lines underneath. And this is how I'm able to like tint the skin and everything
Hmm.
later on. You'll see. Without actually having to manually go in there and airbrush
I
every little
I
bit.
love doing flats.
Yeah, Baron, I had you doing flats for like a year, right?
Yeah, at least a year I think it was, and it was. And I mean I didn't even know, like, as dumb as it is, I didn't know how to do flats before doing it, so definitely was very very tedious and learning and just making sure I get all the way to the lines and color separations and things like that.
So I'm sampling color from my initial roughie. And this is the tedious part. So the quick way to do this when you're doing the color selections is to just fill it in and then select the lines and color underneath it as you go. Look, man, Brandon, you use Clip Studio Paint, right? And so
I do.
the big thing is Clip Studio Paint does all the flats for you, no help. Is that true?
Not at all.
Like
Not at all.
maybe with really simple art, right? Like the
Right.
simpler you get. But when you got tons of nicks and crannies and little edge details and the lines, tons of little ropes and belt buckles and halftone lines in there, it's not gonna happen.
I haven't even, with that new stuff that you have me working on, I haven't even tried to do the flats the way people say you can do it in that. I don't even know if it'll work with that stuff that I've been doing.
Oh, it
With
won't. Because we
Yeah,
tried it
so
on the Battletoad stuff and it doesn't work.
yeah, yeah. So I didn't even try with the new stuff. I was just like, yeah, I know it won't. It won't work well unless I'm doing like just one solid object type things on
When
each
yeah,
layer.
when Brandon's talking about this, he's working on some Rick and Morty fan comics just for practice. I have him like translating the first episode into a comic format just so he can work on basic panel storytelling. And so even with that Rick and Morty stuff, like it doesn't work that way. Like
No,
every
not
artist
at
I've
all.
seen, when they see the video and then they kind of get it working and they make a video immediately telling everyone how great it is and here's how you do it. And then later on, you don't see them do it again.
Right.
Watch someone be like, he does this right here. Not with my art. Do it with my art. Get back to me. Go
Yeah.
flat that Darksiders piece with War I did. You know what I mean? Like, I still gotta do that at some point. This is a super easy piece to draw in color, ultimately. Big burly dudes. and it ain't working for this. So it's about as simple as it gets for Rob. But yeah, Brandon used to go here, and how I'm doing all these select flats, Brandon would do that for, well, I'm doing this for the base color. I call it base flats. But Brandon would do that as his selection flats, and then I'd have to manually select every little thing and turn it into a color. I actually
Right.
timed it. It was faster for me to do the flats myself at that point. And that's not a slight on Brandon. It's just I don't want people picking my colors.
Right.
So if this were like a comic, I would have like a style guide, you know,
Hmm.
and I would have the flatter just put everything on model. So I'm sampling colors from the cutscenes from the game. That artwork is by John Samiavara. He did the cutscenes for the game. I was initially supposed to do the cutscenes, but I said, I'm probably going to be late with that shit, so don't trust me. I was really honest. I'm like, man, I'm probably not going to turn that in. I got a lot going on right now. So he got Red J, and I'm like, good call. Came out great. So I'm just trying to be consistent with the colors in the game because it's going to be in that layout
Hmm.
next to all the screenshots. And if it doesn't have the colors, it can be my own art style, but if it doesn't have the colors, then you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it's just going to look weird. So, yeah, when you're doing stuff like this, man, I recommend you listen to audiobooks or podcasts or something informative so you're not wasting your life.
Or put on Sketchcraft and listen to us. That's always a plus.
There's 1,000 videos, folks, in the YouTube. I had people asking me, "Are you archiving these on Twitch?" I'm like, "No, they don't let me. I'm not. Who do you
Right.
think I am? You know who I am? I am irrelevant. Quote unquote."
And for those that don't know, right there, for a lot of your selections, you're using the lasso tool and just simply cutting things out, right?
Yeah, and so one thing you're not seeing me do, because I'm doing it so fast, is as I select him, because I want that tuft of fur behind him, he's already got a selection flat, right? So I just
Hmm.
broad select that lasso tool, and then I can right click on the preview thumbnail right there over that lime green area and select intersect selection. And what that will do is intersect that green neon select flat with whatever I lasso tooled. And that's how you trap those colors. And so that's how I work super fast. And I've also mapped on my Cintiq um, fill color to one of the buttons. So I'm just hitting a button to fill the color with the foreground color. Like do 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 do. And it's actually I think it's Alt Shift backspace and Control Shift backspace, and that will fill every pixel on a layer that you're doing that with. So if you're recoloring things, you can trap all the pixels. If people are wondering, if you're wondering why I say that's important, Brandon, you ever try to fill in something with the wand tool and it leaves a weird jaggy edge around it, like
Yeah.
yeah,
Like a halo type thing.
yeah. The way to get around that is to, instead of doing fill, you do Control Shift backspace or Alt Shift backspace, which is a really pain to reach over and do manually on the keyboard when you're drawing. So I've mapped it to one button as an action. So I created an action and mapped that action to the button. And so I'm able to just hit a button. Like I had to walk your wife through that last week. It was
Uh,
so fucking annoying for me. Like she was a trooper, but it's just me explaining this stuff.
I'm gonna
Just
have to go back and rewatch some of the stuff you do with flats. Anyway, it's been a while since I've had to do intersecting flats, and I mean it's been a while
so
since
when
I've
you
had to
select
actually do
things
flats.
in Photoshop or mostly any other program, you have three options beyond select, add selection. You can subtract selection, add selection, and intersect. So intersect is like the difference between the two. So like if I drew the lasso tool, if I drew the lasso tool over his pants and boot, but I right clicked over the pants and hit interselect, interselect the selection, it would only select the pants part because it intersects between whatever I hovered over. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
It's super easy. It just I don't know. People get weird out about selections and masks. They go, I don't understand it.
Right.
So you see how like automatically all their tones changed? That's
Hmm.
because I've trapped the colors to go to right up to the edge of the line. It's not at the edge, it's like 1 pixel under it. And so then I can turn those lines some to overlay. I think I usually do overlay and then black. So now you can see it's a little off. So I'm manually selecting.
Hmm.
Thanks, Brandon. I'm manually selecting the lines and then painting in the colors. Now, this is one reason why I switched to CS6. I normally use CS5, but CS6 has one function I just can't get rid of, and that is you can eye drop, you can select any color, um, current and below. So what that means is if my lines are above my flats, if I select current and below, and I select a color, it's going to ignore anything above my flats, i.e. all those halftones you see that the lines are creating. Does that make sense, Brandon? Like the lines are creating all those little halftone colors, and if I want to select a color and I pick select current and below, it will not select any of those colors because they're actually occurring above.
Right, because they're blending basically, right?
Right, they're blending. So it's a real fast way to select colors. Like I find it very useful, and I gave up on it, because CSX was always crashing. But I'm like, man, this fucking makes flats go way faster. So with this particular piece, I just reinstalled CSX. I'm like, I need that option back.
Right.
So that's what I'm doing here. I've selected the lines and I hid the selection and then I'm just painting in by color picking the color that actually exists below those lines. Just cleaning it up. So super fast way to do it.
Yeah. And you got a fan in the chat room says your art is good and they like the colors. That's Sammy.
Hey, thanks, Sammy. This is the time to ask questions. We're gonna be here a little bit. So this remember this is sped up 4 times. So I'm at the 15-minute mark. What's 15 times 4, Brandon? It's
A
15,
lot.
60? I think it's
60.
60, right? you, you just agree with it. If I had said 3,000, you would
Oh,
have.
I would have been like, yeah, definitely.
Right.
Definitely 100%, sir.
It's also the meaning of love, right? So,
Yes. Now, when you're doing so when you're coloring all this, is there ever a moment when you're doing flats or anything where you go back and change the line work, or once you're done with the lines, you're
no.
done?
No, I don't change it. I mean, I might paint over something. If I'm like, that's a little rough, I can paint over it once I'm in the coloring phase.
Yeah.
But I mean, during flats, it's irrelevant because if you think you need to change something, like I mean, I generally catch the shit in the drawing now. The only time I don't catch things is when people rush me. So one time I drew a sword that wasn't straight, and Brandon brought it up, right?
Yeah.
He brought it up, and I never let it go. And it was because I had a business partner pressuring me to get shit done faster than I wanted to.
Yeah.
So it rarely happens. But there are things where I'm like, oh, that hair could use more stuff, or it's a little dirty. I can paint over the lines once I'm coloring, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna go back and change lines because once I change the lines, then I have to do flats again on some area, Like
All right.
that's not no fargan way. So
Did they want you to do, well, I guess since you have pretty much choice, did any part of you wanted to make this a multi-character piece, or you knew right away that you wanted to just do that big headshot with the action pose in front of it?
all right, two things. So one, no one asked me to do this. This has actually held the magazine up. I I added this to my own workload because I was supposed to draw the cutscenes to this game initially,
Uh-huh.
back in 2014, I think. 13, 14, I can't remember. And I couldn't do it. So I've been pressuring these guys to cover this game for a while with, my own motive where I'm like, I'll be able to do a piece of art finally and put it next to the game, right? So get some kind
Right.
of, fun closure for Rob. Now I didn't, there's a bunch of characters in the game. Um, but given the space requirements, uh, I prefer to draw a character or a headshot just given the space requirements. In this case, I did both. So, I mean, I like the character with the headshot. I mean, I do it a lot, but that just came from, When you draw a character, you don't get to see their face, you know.
Right.
But if you just draw the face, sometimes you feel like you didn't get enough of the character. So I always constantly try to like blend the two.
No, I like it. I'm always a fan of the action pose with the bigger like silhouette, three-fourths view headshot. Um, with a lot of art, I like it. I even like it with tattoos where someone will do, like a big picture of, let's say, Batman, and then below it you have like a little chibi Batman or a little action pose of the Batman within it. So things like that I always think are cool. You get the both. You get the big strong silhouette, but then you get a cool action piece to it.
You know where it first dawned on me, that whole layout? Action figure boxes as a kid.
That's what I was just gonna. That's what I was just gonna say.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna say
yeah,
it makes me think of action figure back in the day.
yeah.
You get the cool action figure, and then behind it you got the big silhouette.
The secret to my art is I draw everything like a toy, even the layouts. Like this would look like there's the action figure
Right.
and there's a little packaging. That's just that's how I do it. It's how I get around the whole idea of trying to draw a style or trying to draw like some kind of like magic. I don't know. Like, so you ever stress over what to draw or how to draw or what it should look like?
Every day.
So just the way I know. Maybe I should not talk to Brian. You people out there, the way I get around it is I just think about it as toys, posing little figures. So in this case, 1 second. In this case, it was just to make certain that should it have been the girl or the other dude, but you don't really play as the female character, so I chose the two dudes. Maybe in the sequel.
Right.
Alrighty, so I think that's it for flats, and now I'm figuring out. Oh no, I gotta work out his tattoos. So the quick way I did the tattoos is I filled the skin with blue, and then using my guide and their reference as a guide. See, my roughie, I kind of like layered it in, and then I lasso tool those tattoos in the mask.
That's quicker than probably painting them in.
Yeah, it's super fast. And a good lesson to learn how to do that, because if you're ever working for clients and they want changes, it's a fast way to work.
Yeah, I never used the lasso tool like that before you said, "Hey, this is a faster way." I'm like, "All right, I'll try it out."
Yeah, that got done pretty quick.
Otherwise, I would just try to paint it in, draw it in with the paintbrush, and then go back, erase, go back.
Yeah, I just use little edge tools to go and add, streaky edges. Carve out the little ends. So, super easy.
Easy once you've had practice. Definitely practice it. Or maybe it's just me. I need
Learning to
more
draw with
practice
the
with it.
lasso tool is a good thing. I think if you're going to do digital art, learn to draw with the lasso tool. Not everything, but just learn to draw stuff with it. Really comes in handy for like trees, bush, any knickknacks you need. Things where you kind of want to take away the hand element,
Uh-huh.
really does solve a lot of problems. It just feels weird when you're like, it's not like drawing. I'm like, yeah, let that go.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. It's such a natural thing to do, I guess, because it's not like I said, it's not like you're drawing where you'll do a stroke. It's like you're literally just like cutting out like pieces.
It's sort of like airbrushing where you create stencils.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they go, well, it's not natural like drawing. I'm like, neither is fucking airbrushing where you create out a bunch of stencils, like so, or frisket masks and stuff. So it's just like after all this stuff, it gets kind of a little technical. Like I'm over, I gotta get this just right. Um, and then when you go to actually paint, like generally I take a break somewhere.
Uh-huh.
Let me speed it up a little bit. There we go. I stress over these sort of things. Because then I'm like, are these like really cultural tattoos? Because it's kind of based on a historical event. I'm like, am I
Right.
fucking up some kind of history? Am I gonna piss off someone who really knows this shit gonna be like, that is not the accurate tattoo. Like, when you watch a movie like Braveheart or some shit. All right, so now I'm gonna color in the background. The easiest way to do this is I put my roughy right above, and I'm just selecting the colors, airbrushing on the very bottommost layer. That is an easy way to copy your work. And let me tell you something. This is a really important thing to learn because if you ever submit an idea to an art director, like that thumbnail, and they approve it, and then you go and like the background doesn't line up the way it did in the thumbnail, or you change the gradient, like there's a difference between plussing and changing. Like as I drew it, it got a little better, a little more refined, or you completely changed from like that gradient to like, I don't know, a diamond shape or something.
Uh,
You don't want to do that. Like you got to stick to whatever gets approved. You just have to learn how to like plus what gets approved. This is a hard concept to grasp, but it's the number one thing I've seen artists like struggle with when they first, start working professionally is they'll be like, "Well, I worked on it and it changed." I'm like, "But they didn't pay for that change. They paid for this one."
right.
Like you need to like find a way to create the best version of that thing you submitted, you know? So it can improve as you go along, but it can't like radically change. So having that initial roughie lined up to my final art and not tracing it, not being like, well, that's it. That's what I got. Like just it's there. I can check it. So I didn't deviate too far. And I can sample some initial colors and then plus it. That's why it's important too that when I send color roughies these days, I'm like, that's what I'm trying to do the coolest version of this shitty piece of art.
Right.
Like I just threw it under the bus. I'm like, I know it's crap. It's going to be the best version of that crappy piece of art. You
Yeah.
know? Oh, this is where people were asking me about lasso tools during the stream. This is me. I'll jump this. Skip that. I'm showing how you can draw like grass really quickly. So sometimes during the live streams, folks, I give out little art tips. So this adding a stroke around a character is a really easy way to get out of drawing tons of details and shit for the background. I was showing how to make selections, so because I was bored. All right, and now, yeah. So let me just skip all this and see. I'm still tweaking this top tattoo on his head. Stressing out over about this. Coloring is all about planes and surface planes. So even if they're real shapes or fake shapes or fun shapes or whatever, any bit of light, any bit of detail is going on the plane, the surface. How like think about it like it's not a drawing of a dude, it's a statue of a dude. So anywhere you paint on that statue, it's going to have a plane, a surface that moves in other directions, horizontally, vertically, slanted. So you want to add color. You want to train your brain to see everything. Okay, let me skip all this. Let me skip this.
The lessons in between.
Yeah, okay. This is me adding a stroke back here. So we can skip all this. This is me explaining to people how layers work. This is fun. Okay. And then I drop in my customized textures. They're going to look a little fucked up. I tend to drop them all in and then airbrush out like intensities. These textures really are designed to blow the shit out of the art. Make it look all like... The idea is that I set it up, these textures, so that if you ever take like a comic book that's already been printed on crappy paper and scan it back
Mm-hmm.
in, that's what it looks like. You can see the difference. Boom, boom. So, and it just adds noise and, I don't know, color fluctuations. I like the way it looks. So for my art, it goes on everything now.
Yeah, I always like it. I think it's cool.
People keep asking me, you gonna sell those textures? Okay, so that was the first, and then we can skip ahead. So, all right, let's see if I can get to. There we go. Now I'm setting up my lines. And I'm like, look at that. I actually name layers and shit.
What?
I'm like cleaning up that file.
Who are you anymore?
You know.
Usually it's just like 200 layers and there's no names, but you know where exactly they're at.
So I've created a few different lighting. I'm not gonna. Like a lot of artists like to use 3D tool sets. Like, oh, this is a lighting rig. It's not. Sometimes I have like different layers set up where I can drag in and kind of like use them. So let's see if I can just jump ahead. So I'm grabbing some of those from previous files and
That's
dragging.
cheating, Rob. That's
Yes,
cheating.
yes, cheat. So, okay, we can get right here. So I'm just like, what colors did I use to do that thing? Oh yeah, I forget, folks, how I do shit. So the first thing I'm going to do is tint these characters to the background, where I select the select flats, copy a piece of that background I did, and then put it over the art, and then multiply it very lightly. So this will just, what that does is, in like when you paint, Brandon, and you tonalize the canvas before you paint, it's the
Hmm.
same kind of thing. You're like tonalizing the canvas. You're tonalizing the characters to the background. Not a lot. It's not a ton. It's just like 20%. Multiply. Sometimes a color burn. However it looks. And then that just automatically like gets them looking from looking super bright and shit. And then now I'm creating those shadows and lights and layers. I'm gonna paint in the masks. I wish there was an easy way to explain this. So I have 3 or 4 colors that I think look good when you combine them together as overlays,
Hmm.
multiplies, and color lights, highlights. It just depends on the piece. And then I group them into a group, trap that with the mask. That's what that is there. I trapped it to the select flag. And then I regroup it and then paint in that mask. So the whole layer is filled with 3 different types of colors. I mask it to the art I want colored, and then I group that again and color in that mask so I can um, paint highlights and everything in masks. So that's what I'm setting up right now. I don't even know how, like, it's tough to say like this is a way to work because
Hmm.
it's one way to work. And I don't have like one way. There's like 4 or 5 different ways that I have to work. Sometimes I have to work completely in black and white for work, because they need things like when I was on Spyro, they need things in different colorways. So the easiest way to do that is to render the whole thing in black and white and then do colors and gradient maps. So that's one way to do it. There's a way to color um, everything in color one go. That's this way. But I use these lighting rigs because I like the pants to have a certain color and the greens to be a certain color. Like so, and
On
there's
every piece.
yeah,
Or are you saying?
and I don't manually want to do it, so I fill up these layers with different colors and then mask out and color in the masks. So this is a hard concept for me to describe. I don't even know how anyone would understand it. What I do know is that the thing to think about is you can paint everything in a layer, or you can fill a whole layer up with the color and use a mask and paint in the mask. And I find that easier because when you're in a mask, everything's it's black, white, or gray, meaning that it's going to be 100%, 50%, or 0%. And so when you're in the mask, I can just hit the X button and flip back and forth when I'm coloring versus constantly selecting colors and airbrushing with them or painting with them. Does that make sense? Especially when you're using the lasso tool, because in the mask, I can just focus on where the light sources are coming from and just
Okay.
draw in the color and cut out. Like, see, they're all dark. You're going to see it really quickly. I'll start to draw in the light sources using the lasso tool and airbrush that stuff in. So, and this is all being done in masks. So, yeah. And right here, I'm trying to figure out, like, I don't want them to look too pink because like the background is cool, so it needs like more blues in there. It can't have that warm high noon light. Like so, light balances depending on time of day and location. In this case, they're in a forest. There's a little bit of blues and stuff. So it has to be a cooler shade layer, not a warmer shade layer. So I'm just tweaking these four color layers to get an effect that has color in the shadow, because I like color being in the shadow. I don't like it to be dead looking. But it can't be too much color to where he's glowing pink next to a blue background. So that's what's happening. And then when I select things with the lasso tool, I have two buttons mapped, well, three buttons. So one is refine edge. So if I draw something and you set it to refine edge, it will, if it's jaggy, it'll smooth it out. So I don't have to draw the lasso tool selections perfectly. I can make them kind of rough, and then I've mapped refine edge to a hotkey, and it's refining the edge.
That's cool.
That's what I'm explaining to these people here. The other thing I do is I've mapped a key to feathering edge. So if I want that shade layer that I just selected to have a soft edge to it, right? I've mapped feather edge, which blurs the edge of my selections. And every time I tap it, it blurs it a little more, a little more, a little more. That's how you get that soft, you know, the Disney style airbrushing where the characters have a softer edge to them. I'm not, that exists because I'm feathering the edge, which you can see in the history window right over there if you take a look. Feather, feather, feather. 3 or 4 times. So in this case, the light's coming behind him, so he's darker up here. There's a little key light back here. I find it easier to make everything dark and then airbrush in the highlights. Unless it's a totally in the middle of the day piece, then you know you don't want to. If you're only gonna have very minimal shadows, what's the point? You gotta invert it. Just draw the shadows in. But if it's a more of a moodier thing, then it's easier to fill the whole thing up dark. So again, now I'm adding color back into that shadow by just adjusting one of these 4 layers here. So I'm thinking of all these little tufts as little triangle diamond shapes. And like the plane on his nose is an actual shape. There's an actual surface there. I can make that softer by just airbrushing in a little bit of a softer edge. You can start to carve out these shapes. Go ahead.
With the so I don't know how to word this always the best way, but let's say like with his neck fur compared to his skin, would you do a difference of feathering soft and such, or would it all be kind of the same so it's all cohesive?
If it's organic, it's feathered. If it's metallic or man built, it's got a harder edge.
Gotcha.
Does that help?
Yeah. It's just because like you see, the skin, and you're like, you're feathering it so it's a little softer because it's a skin. But then I'm like thinking, well, then also the fur is probably soft too, so they'll probably get kind of the same feathering. But yeah, if it was like the sword blade or something, then it would be like a much sharper.
Yeah, so I would just draw it with the lasso tool so it would have a metallic, harder edge. Same with these light sources. These are more stylized light sources, these rim lights, so I'm not feathering those at all. So I'm trying to find a way that's a little graphic with the light sources. One, to save time. I say graphic, I mean like I'm just drawing in these like broad light sources, these little rim lights. Same with that stroke. Like that stroke's there to add warmth to the edge without actually rendering the shit out of the background. Like it's a t-shirt trick. It's a graphic design trick.
It's cool though. Like a lot of people don't think about how much rim lighting and things like that can really push shapes on your art. I never did it before where I would just do, how would I say, I just do a couple layers. I just keep doing shading upon shading upon shading, or just like, darkening edges, light. It's like, but some of the stuff you can really achieve with that rim light, that extra little bit of cream that cuts out the edges,
I would say the most important thing to first learn is learn how to see everything as a three-dimensional surface. So when you're even when you're drawing, so when you're airbrushing, you can go in there and add light sources to surfaces. Like that's the most important thing. And then, through deadlines, trial and error, you can find more graphic ways to like that rim light, right? Where you're not relying on it to get the whole job done, but you're not overdoing your art. I mean, I see a lot of art, man. I think the more detailed you go, the less your style starts to show through. Does that make
Hmm.
sense? Like the less your hand, right? So super realistic paintings that look amazing for like, Magic, World of War, those Magic the Gathering stuff, things like that. They're great because all that art when you're playing it as a game tends to tie together, right? It binds it together. However, when you're creating your own things that need to look inherently like you, um, the less you put on the page, the more people can see your hand, your style, your thought process. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, um, I tend to lean somewhere around there, like what's an acceptable amount? And again, this is me now putting blue in there because I'm like, it's too red. I don't have a guide for this. I'm like, cool part about this is these are adjustment layers so on Photoshop there's this thing called adjustment layers and you can fill it as a solid. So I can just go into that, make a new adjustment layer, fill it with the color and see what it reacts. And I'm putting some green in there because I'm like, well, maybe it would bounce up from the floor and there'd be some green in the shadows. But they tend to look a little dead when you do just the, so it's like, where do I put it in the order? Where do I put it? So they look tough, but they look pretty. It's fucking pain in my ass, man.
Trial and error, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this isn't good for views on streams. Like if you're trying
No,
to get a
but
lot of people to follow you, don't ever do this. Don't show this. Just don't stream 2 hours of me talking about it.
right.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is something, when you're making your art, like you gotta try a lot of things just to see what's gonna work for the piece you're working on. Like, there's no set guidelines for
Well,
each piece.
I can tell you one of the decisions I came up with here is I'm using lot problem solving. So the one thing is they need to be separated. So what I decided was the foreground character will have more green in it because he's closer to the ground, and the background character will have more blues and purples, and that will help separate them. I just came up with that right now. Like that's where I'm at in the drawing. Like I'm looking at it like that's where I figured that out. That's all I'll get. So it was like I want green, I want purple, but it doesn't work with both of them. So I put it more into one and less in the other. So I get it in the image, it's there. And then I'm checking to see how it reacts with my textures. And those textures look really streaky because they're at full blast. I will change the opacity of those textures based on where they are on the characters.
Hmm.
Some will get more, some will get less. Um, it's not just a blanket turn on the texture, piece is done. Like that doesn't work that way. I wish there
Right.
was some instant amazing thing I do that just solves all my problems, but it's a little bit of like this, it's a little bit of that, it's looking at it, does it work, does it not work? I'm carving out this, I'm like, fuck, I'll just manually do it. It's not working with the lasso.
Also, Alley Cat says hello in the chat.
Hey, good job, Brandon.
Well, I didn't want to cut you off, but I got to give them shout outs.
So I'm like, how much of this light do I put on his face?
That doesn't make them look shiny and greasy,
Yeah,
glossy.
well, he should look a little. Yeah, he's a little sweaty, but yeah. And when I don't know, I just go work on another part of the piece. I'm like, well, I'll go soften some of these. So look, make it real simple. You got two kind of edges when you're coloring: soft edges and hard edges. Like it really is as simple as that. And anything you do, whether it's watercolor, gouache, color pen, whatever, it's a soft edge or a hard edge. So, I start with the soft, and then when I want a softer edge, I start with a hard, and then whenever I want a softer edge, I can just manually airbrush that out. So now I've used his selection flat and I'm selecting some of that background color and airbrushing behind him to pop this character forward. Oh, atmospheric. So that's going over the lines. So that's why it's important to trap your selections as much as possible with those lines so that when you do that, you're not doing too much cleanup, you know? Like
Eliminate some of the
yeah, I'm just pushing it back so it looks like he's moving forward.
right.
That's it. I try to get these eyes working. If the eyes work and I can like look at the character, everything else is easier for me. If I don't feel like the characters are looking at me some way, then I feel like the whole thing is fucking hosed. This was an easy piece. I mean, they're just angrily staring at me, so.
Give that death stare.
Yeah, that's that look I give you when you knock on my door.
Mm-hmm. What do you want?
So now I need some stronger shadows. So I'm going to go here and select under his chin and use darker, some black, some soft shade. And I'm just airbrushing that in to push like his chin forward. So anywhere you put a dark shadow, it's going to pop everything else around it forward. So I call
Like
it
I know
soft shade.
I know you said it before, but can you say it again? The difference between pushing and plussing?
So pushing is just you want to take certain shapes and make them more three-dimensional. You want them to pop off the page. A way to do that is instead of trying to constantly add more light sources to make things brighter, to work a shape, you can shade things next to it, make things darker, which will pop a shape forward without doing anything to it. Right? So pushing is just making shapes more three-dimensional. Plussing is improving the image without changing the overall like agreed goal of the image. Does that make sense? Like I if I'm plussing the background, I've kept the same initial design that was agreed upon. I'm not, but I'm improving as I go. Like it's making that same idea better. It's not, well, instead of a forest, now it's a fucking ocean, right? Like, because that's a really great way to never get paid,
Yeah.
you know, or to like get yelled at by an art director. Making the forest better, like adding more details in the trees or bloom light, that's plussing, right? So improving the image, not changing it into a different image and going, well, that's where the image took me. Like, you know, that
Yeah.
he looks undead, so I'm trying to find ways to add just enough darkness. The actual rendering's the easy part. It's just getting the tone down, you know. Unless you don't care. A really easy way to get this stuff done fast is just don't care.
That's the spirit.
If you don't care about any of this and you just make whatever and you got a million prints in that artist alley and you just fucking do whatever you want to do, then yeah, everything I'm
Right.
teaching right now is pointless.
Yeah, but if you want an actual real good art job in future things, you know, you gotta.
Let's see if I can zoom it ahead. What he's moving. I think I'm like at this point I'm like, you know, I'll just work on lighting this guy because I don't know how to fix that face right now.
Right.
And I don't know how much of this dude to get rid of. So I'm also like, once I start showing his original skin, then I'm like, is he too green? So this would have been better to figure out in the color roughy, ultimately. These kind of shades, you know? Um, and like color lighting. But in the interest of time, I just was like, well, it'll look like this, but with tonalized skin and shadows. And I'll figure that out on the page. So That's why there's a lot of this little like tweaking back and forth. Because he's going to be mostly in colored shadow, and then his natural skin tone will come around. Well, it's this rim light. I should also stress too, I don't think I'd colored anything for the better, like at this level, for the better part of like 2 months. So I've been doing a lot of really conceptual work at work. So it's like, anytime I feel the skill slipping, I'm like, I need to go do something. Need to go do something at a different level. As much as like game art all looks great, you're just seeing the pieces that they selectively show to the public. The majority
Right.
of it's super rough, not like would impress anybody, Because there's a lot of things that have to be just figured out, and they can't be figured out by rendering the shit out of everything for hours every day. So it always looks rough. And then the ones that make it go to a higher level of polish in production. Sometimes I'm trapped in design decisions that I don't get to make, so I'm not rendering anything, and then I forget how to do all this stuff. So that's when I spend my weekends doing shit like this. This is fun, like lassoing the hairs. So, and I'm trying to leave a little bit of an edge around the dark edge around
Hmm.
it, so it looks more three-dimensional.
Were you happy with your final colors on all this and how it all?
Yeah, the only thing about the image that um, I'm like, I don't know, is that the way that hind leg worked. I had intended for it to be more leaning forward, but I just gave that up. I was like, it's going to require like me figuring out the drawing to do that. I'm not going to do it. So I think in the final image, it doesn't really matter much. But I look at it, I'm like, yeah, that back leg, I could have probably worked on that more. Color-wise, the final one's fine. The only thing that you don't see here that you'll see me add pretty quickly toward the end is I figured out, oh, it needs more blood because the game has a shitload of blood. So I add that in after the fact. But I mean, look, my coloring style, man, I always say, dude, it's 1997 in HD, like if you remember the covers to like PlayStation Magazine and stuff, like that's the kind of art I make. Just instead of like four people doing it, I'm doing it. And then I'm trying to like pick colors that are more relevant to either the game or to modern sensibilities with lighting, because some of those colors could be a little garish, right? Back in the day, like they were coming from picking limited color palettes, and so they were still using a lot of that, which works for mood. Sometimes when you just have a weird orange light in the middle of Resident Evil, you're like, that looks cool, like.
Right.
But I mean, at the same time, I'm like, well, could also be a little bit more pleasing to actual like lighting sources and stuff. So, but it's weird because my art falls somewhere between kids art and grown-up art. You know what I mean? Like it's neither
Right.
one or the other. So clients tend to go, "You want to work on our children's book?" I'm like, I don't know if I'm the children's dude, man. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I'm in that action figure teen, the kids who bought Spawn action figures, the middle group.
Yeah.
And those people aren't generally, unless they're artists, don't care about art. When you're that age, you're out playing Fortnite and shit. So I'm like, I can design Fortnite toys.
Yeah.
Like so. This is me adjusting those halftones per character. So
So each piece gets its own halftone layer.
yeah, and it's beyond that. I'm also like graying out in the mask, like I'm toning it down a little bit and then adding a little more, so it doesn't look like it's just a piece of texture thrown over the whole piece. I think when it looks like that, it's jarring. It should look like I scanned this in. It shouldn't look like a piece of texture sitting over an entire piece of art.
Right.
So that requires, that's why I have a base set of these textures and then I adjust it per image in terms of intensities and texture detail. Like I can duplicate some of those layers and create more texture. So and then I put it on the background to see how that looks. Now, I don't want to leave it on too much while I'm coloring because those texture layers eat up a shitload of memory. So like I'm constantly turning them on, checking, yeah, they look good, and then turning it back off and working.
Otherwise,
Sometimes,
it'll slow everything down.
yeah, but sometimes I can look at it and go, oh, this doesn't need much more detail. You
How
know,
often do you save the art mid working so if it crashes or?
I try to do it every 15 to 30 minutes, but I've fucked up. You know, you can lose track of time.
I think we've all done that. You know,
Mm.
you're an hour in and then you forget.
I also recommend when you save to not control Alt S or Control Shift S, save as, and always save a version, an A and B file, because it happened once where I was saving and in the middle of a save, the power went out and corrupted the file. Like it just went out, killed all the power in my studio,
Right in
and
the middle.
right in the middle, so it corrupted the whole file. I lost 6 hours of work.
Wow.
So now I always save as a copy. So I have at least two versions of the same file I'm working on separated by, 30 minutes to an hour versus the whole thing's, ruined. So now I'm just trying to figure out what level of how much light is hitting this sword. What should be a soft edge, what should be a hard edge. And then I'm going to do this little trick with the light. You'll see. Yeah, I don't know how this is sitting, so I'm like, fuck, it looks weird. Sometimes it doesn't look as weird as it does with the day you're working on it. I look at it now, I'm like, I probably overthought some of this, but you see how like I go back in and I add this little like shade around the white, and there's something about that like shade around the white that pops it forward, you know what I mean, versus flattening it. So I'm just going in there and just like, all right, so it needs that little dark rim around everything. Otherwise, it just looks a little too flat to me. So, and I get that. Like when I was in college, I had art friends go, you just focus a little too much on little things like that, man." But
Hyper focus.
but I'll tell you, man, working in like games, I have art directors that literally see twice as much as I do. You know what I mean? So
Right.
I've always wondered, am I applying too much thought to this? And the answer is nope. Nope. So now I'm trying to, okay, how much light is hitting him going across? It would just be on his arm. It wouldn't be all over him, right? Because his
Right.
arm is popping forward. It would just be like this wrist. And then how many levels of light do I do? I tend to like two, maybe three. But the more you add, it, I don't know, it's like steps. So it just adds more time. So here I'm drawing and I'm leaving little gaps and then look, boom, and it works. It just pops those surfaces forward.
Yeah, it looks cool.
It's an older style of rendering. you know, these days in comics, it's either super airbrushed, super realistic airbrush like on J. Scott Campbell stuff, or super flat, like that painted flat look like on the Sonic comics.
uh,
I don't seem to understand how to do either one of those, so like, well, I know this style because I stared at it enough as a kid. I just like drawing with the lasso tool. Um, I do have to do that more realistic airbrush rendering at work for large 3D models. I just would not want to do it to my own art. So, because it's just, it's fine for work. I think it's necessary, but for my own art, yeah, looks somewhere between like cell animation and like stickers, and I don't know. Now, when I'm adding these light sources in, it looks weird, so I have to adjust those highlights. And I need to push that back, so I'll soft shade some of his hand back into that shield. And his pants are looking a little purpley to me, so I will fix that at some point. Big surfaces now. Muscles.
I still love the texture on it. It just adds such a retro, cool look to pieces.
It's kind of like, Brandon, when you draw something and someone hooks up the colors, everyone looks at it and goes, "Who's your colorist?" And you're like, "Yeah, I know. It's the colorist doing all that." Now it's like those textures, man. You know what I mean? They solve the problems. But in my case, I just sort of feel like it means I can color less and get fluctuation. Like interesting
Hmm.
noise. It's like film grain, man. Like I don't like it when they remove film grain from film. Even if it's digital, add in some fucking grain.
Right.
I like the imperfectness. So just took a while to find something that also didn't look like I was just adding halftone texture on top of the art. So any questions so far, Brandon? Anything we missed?
I don't know what we missed. I'm just looking at it and I'm like thinking, what would I have trouble with besides everything? um,
Starting.
starting, starting, finishing, all the above.
This is a
Um,
little trick that I've learned how to do. Once it's dark, you can throw a brighter, so you can draw around areas and then airbrush in a little soft bounce light. Even if it's a very neutral color, a very light neutral color, it will make it look more three-dimensional and pop things forward. In this case, I'm selecting a little bit of those blues and greens, and then I'll turn the opacity down a little bit so it's not so bright, but yeah. So this will be the bounced. Let's see, I'll airbrush this in. And since I can select color and below, it's not selecting any of the colors that the textures are creating. Selecting colors from below the textures. Then I can just airbrush out those edges so they're softer. And then I'm like, you'll see me make changes, but and this is being done over the lines too, so as I'm adding a bit of this bounce light into the shadow areas, it's going over the lines, so it'll look a little
so
bit
it
more.
tints the lines too.
It tints the lines and it'll look a little bit more three-dimensional. Anything under the lines will push the drawing forward. If I want to push the lighting forward, it just goes over the lines. Yeah, now I'm going to tweak that lip. I'm like, I can see it. I remembered to save. I'm like, I got to save this. So that's me saving. So a lot of this work is just picking a light source, whether it's a direct light or a bounce light, drawing selections, airbrushing, and erasing out opacities or edges to soften it a little bit, and then doing that again and again, just a few times to get those surfaces to look a little bit more three-dimensional, while adding in color and interest.
Right.
Um, and then I'm like, is it too much? Is it not enough?
When's the last time you over rendered a piece where you felt like I did way too much?
When was the last time I did that?
Yeah, where you like were really just like, man, I put too much into that, or I like it's a recent time where you're like, I put too much. That's too many things.
Maybe on the Monster Boy piece I drew. I felt like the coloring on that could have been more moody and less surfacey. Not in a while. Um, I think at this point, a lot of my decisions aren't so much on the level of like lassoing and selecting highlights. It's, is this an interesting light scheme? You know what I mean? Like, is this interesting colors? Does this lighting work? So, and then I want to get definitely more conceptual with backgrounds. Like, I really want to put messy, roughy stuff next to drawn characters, which you'll see me do all this week as I work on the cover to Lana Luca. So
Oh,
I'll be
nice.
doing very, like my roughy, people are like, oh, that roughy looks great. I'm like, I hope you think so because that background is pretty much, I'm not changing a lot from that background. Like, I'd say it's
Right.
probably 80% done. She needs a ton of detail. She needs to be drawn, and then I might add a couple extra things to the foregrounds, but I don't want to change a lot. I like this idea of really loose, sloppy looking backgrounds next to drawn characters, and then just drawing a few items that they interact with a little bit more rendering and detail. And that isn't obviously that's a production issue. It's like, well, I can speed things up that way, but I just like that look. I don't like backgrounds having super detail and characters having super detail. So just a way to pop things out. So, but in order to do that, I've had to like also go back to like how do I render backgrounds like you know what I mean and make it look good. Like how do I do that? And it's really about light, focusing on light and foreground, middle ground, background. So, which I did experiments years ago when I did my little background pieces, and then I'll be doing more of that as we go along.
So always, always changing, I guess, is always a plus.
Yeah,
Knowing.
a great way to get popular on the internet is to never change. People don't like it when you change, right? And they don't like, you know, when you're like, oh, you used to do all this stuff I really like. You don't do it anymore. I'm like, yeah, I don't do that anymore. Um, but I also feel like I don't really feel like how I draw now is how I've always wanted to draw. I'm just trying to get there. You know what I mean? I don't even
Yeah.
know if it's possible. I don't even know if there's a version where I'm like, oh, hey, that's what an artist always wanted to be. I do look at it like, would 15-year-old Rob be proud? Like if I could tell 15-year-old Rob, this is all you're ever going to be able to do, could he live with that? And, that solves like where to stop, how much effort to put it in. Like, oh yeah, he'd be proud of that because 15-year-old Rob was a fucking picky motherfucker. You know, so um, and anytime I feel like I'm not doing enough compared to other artists, I just go back to like the only artist I have to please is that kid who's about to sign up his entire life to get here. You know what I mean? Like that's really the person that I have to please.
Hmm.
But this sort of thing, we're like airbrushing in bounce lights and trying to find what's the right balance between this and that. Like what's enough, what isn't enough. Like that is just being able to create more work. If I spend less time rendering one piece, I can make more art, right? However, if I'm making a bunch of art that's just a bunch of nonsense, then that doesn't help either. So it's just trying to find what is that balance. And the only thing that like you can render and shade the shit out of something. But if you don't understand what's fundamentally working the piece, like if you don't understand light source,
Hmm.
you know, um, time of day, color, temperature, those things, then you can't add emotion to your art. And so part of what I'm also trying to do beyond just this being a rendering exercise in terms of time, and one of the things that's going on in my head is this emotionally is cool, and like it's always that balance between the technical and the creative. The technical side is how much time, effort, and whatever did I put into to do this? How much did it take? Versus the creative side of how is this making me feel? Like how is this making anyone feel? Like do they feel anything? Like and that's less tangible, man. That's harder to make a video about. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
harder to even like when you see something and you go, "Oh, that movie felt soulless," or "That song feels soulless." What does that mean? Maybe the person who worked on that put everything they had into it. You don't
Right.
know. They didn't have it. How do you know they have? Like you don't know. So I think, well, for me, what I know visually can create emotion is color and light. Like when you look at a sunset, it inspires. If you're not a heartless asshole, you know what I mean? Like it inspires some feeling
I hate
inside,
the sun.
right? Well, that's an emotion too. Hate, right?
Yeah.
I didn't say they're good emotions. You can inspire bad emotions, but it
Yeah.
is a matter of emotion. And that's one thing that I learned doing t-shirts was how to, with one or two colors, help create a sense of emotion. Which is why I went that route versus being, say, like a tattoo artist. Tattoo art tends to, in my experience, be a lot of can you copy this drawing onto someone? How well is the rendering?
Right.
You understand what I mean? And like that
Yeah.
image means something to that person. But when another person looks at a tattoo, it's rarely creating an emotion in that person who's viewing it. They may go, "Oh, that looks cool. I would like something like it." Then they go find an image that they're related to. That's not the same thing as looking at a sunset. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
A sunset is a universal form of emotion that everyone who's watching it is getting a different feeling from. And
Yeah.
so what I've spent the last couple of years really toward trying to get my art toward, and I feel like I'm just kind of starting it, is to be able to invoke that emotion and create just enough technical rendering to get there so that I can create more and more and not be tied down to endlessly rendering out little details that are going to do nothing but just impress like 2% of the audience. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you drew all those
Right.
details. Like, that doesn't really get you anywhere. Because, and I've had no choice but to get there the last couple of years because I've been doing game art. And the people I work for are like, you know, beyond does this work in a game, it's what does that make a player feel? And that's where I was like,
Right.
oh, so I am right about this. This is something that I have to always be doing, and this is when you notice, folks, over the last couple of years, a lot of the podcasts stop because not because I don't want to do them, but because I don't know how to convey sometimes what I'm working on. One, I don't want to get in trouble and slip things that I'm working on. You know what I mean? Like, and be like, oh, I'm losing my job because I fucking slipped
Right.
the word on some shit. But also because I don't know. And if I don't know, I don't feel I have the right to explain to anyone else, what I don't know. You know what I mean? Like I have to explain it to me first. And not just explain it, but fully understand it and then be able to prove, here's how I did this. And I know it's working when people tell me, "Oh, I love the way this looks." Like I can tell the difference between they're impressed with some technical thing I did versus some emotional thing that I did. You know,
Yeah.
so um, and that's why I don't make art. How to add emotion into your fucking art? Like, look, I can. There's concepts, but getting there is it's going to be different for everyone, and it's going to be different depending on airbrushing in Photoshop or rendering with color pencil. It's going to the technical how you get there is more of a technical issue. What you're trying to do is a creative issue. And I always say, like, if you can't see what you're trying to do, but if you can't see, if you can't see the matrix, I can't explain it to you. Like there's a certain
Yeah.
level that people will get to, they will naturally get to, and then they need help. Once they know, oh, I need to do this thing, what do I do? That's where I'm like, oh, well, I'm here now. We can talk about these concepts, but trying to impart that knowledge on people who aren't ready for it serves nothing. You know what I mean? It just honestly it gets in the way because then you got people who are honestly. I had a guy who's constantly asking questions like, "How do you draw on paper?" And I'm like, "Look, man, I can't reply to it because I'm like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you don't understand how drawing on paper works, I'm not the guy to teach it to you. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
that's another level. Like, I'm not at that level. You know. Um, but it is exciting when you do meet someone who's like, I've been trying to do that thing, and I see, you got there. How did you get there? And then it's like, oh, you can get there by doing this. But it always starts with a mindset. It never starts with get this brush and set the opacity to this. Like that is never the way it gets done. That's why I reject the whole this program will solve all your problems. You companies want nothing more, man, than programs to replace artists. Trust me on this. You know? And let me tell you, man, they keep trying to do it, and the ones that always work is when artists come back and you can see people. You know what I mean? When you watch a movie that made you feel something, it's way different than when, oh, we just put it in and the fucking computer cranked out all the animation. Okay, now I'm explaining how my inks work to people on the stream. So I can skip this. Drawing wood details and shit. So. All right. Where are we at here? We're at the hour and 20. So, how much we got? We got about a little bit more time. Well, a lot of this is just bounce lights. So I'll let this go for about 5 minutes and I'm going to skip ahead. So,
For those that don't know, even though you've gone over it a couple times, what is a bounce light, Rob?
it's light that is bouncing off the environment onto your characters. So you have a key light, which is global. That's where it could be the sun, it can be the lamp in your room, right? Shining
Okay.
right on you. A bounce light is when that light hits a surface and the color of that surface bounces onto you.
So if the key light hits a purple wall, and then in a picture you take in, maybe if there's a little bit of purple tinting on your face or arm or
The
something where
closer
normal light
you
would
are
be.
to that purple, there are going to be some bounce light from that surface onto you. Yeah. And so the question is, how much of that do I put in the image? Sometimes I want a technical thing where I select a part of this, and with a neutral color, um, I'll airbrush a little bit of light in there that just bounces those. It pushes those shadows forward when I do that. The other part is this greenish thing, which is coming from actual, like, the idea that he might be in a forest. So that's what you see me doing. A little bit of both.
So this question I have with bounce lighting, and let me just say the whole question: is it something you learned from cinema, your animation classes, or was this like just part of the actual art, or how did you come about?
Well,
Because I
one should learn how to render surfaces. Like
uh,
that's a part of art instruction. That should exist in everyone's basic teaching.
but it doesn't.
Unfortunately,
But it
but in
doesn't.
my case, it did not. You know, I
Yeah.
didn't really understand the concept until because I was always looking at comic books and animation, right?
Right.
And they don't do a lot of that back in the 80s and 90s because it was hand drawn. It's kind of impossible to do a lot of that. I didn't really get a grasp on that until I worked in 3D programs where you're like, oh, you did this thing, caustics, and if you throw a light, it bounces off into this. And then you're like, oh, the light bounces? Yeah, so it hits the surface and goes over there. And then, I meet artists who got a fine art illustration technique. Like, no shit, Sherlock, it's called bounce light. I'm like, well, thanks for fucking I don't know that shit, you know? So, um, I didn't really understand how to work it into my art until uh, I started using the lasso tool to draw light sources, you know? Then it was easy to draw little balanced lights and airbrush them in. Manually painting those in with like a painter brush, I don't really, man, I don't understand how to do half that shit. You know,
Right.
it always, I don't know how to do it. Like I constantly, every few months, I sit down and go, I'm gonna just paint some fucking shit, and I'm like, I don't think that way. Whatever that is, don't work with me.
Right.
So even when I'm doing watercolor, I'll throw a color pencil on top to get to tint things. You know what I mean? Like I just think in a different way apparently. So this manually drawing in these little rim lights with a solid color is a graphic design technique I learned from shirts. And that's how to pop an image forward using a rim light. Um, in this case, an oil brush. This is a not a realistic technique. This is a graphic technique, but helps show off the drawing. Now, the more painterly your image, those kind of rim lights can just be a painter brush, like a scribble brush, like a little chalk brush. Doesn't have to be so perfect. But I do have like drawn lines here, so these rim lights have to be a little cleaner. Otherwise, it starts to muddy up the drawing. And I won't lie, painting looser paintings is way more effective for time than drawing lines. This is why the digital painting thing has taken off over the last 10 years. Because everyone's like, man, I can fucking just get some chalk brushes and just, fucking awesome
Right.
dragon, and I absolutely agree with it. Except I'm addicted to drawing fucking lines, for my own art. Like I like designing, like I like action figures, So backgrounds, I like it more painterly. When it comes to the characters, I like drawing lines. I like Spawn when Capullo has all those lines drawn on him. I like Red J's art when he's drawing figures and shit. Carlos Miglia, Humberto Ramos, you know. Plus, you can see the artist's hand when you do that. The more painterly, the less you're going to see the artist's hand. And I've said that before, but I have to remind myself sometimes when I go a little too far on my own side. I'm like, well, I can just paint the stuff in and get 10 times more work done. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't get 10 times more work done.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like maybe once I get 10 times more work done, I'll feel the need to get 10 times more than that. You know what I mean? Like there is a limit. So, you ever see an artist where you're like, they're making good money and you're like, maybe you should draw less. Maybe you're drawing a little much. You ever see some of those people?
Oh
I don't want
yeah.
to say who they are, but as a fan, not
Oh
as
yeah.
an artist, just as a fan, where you're like, maybe if you did a little less, put a little bit more effort, little less automaton this
I
shit
wonder
through.
if I could say.
No,
No,
not
I
at all.
got it. I got it. I got it. That is not some. That is that is something that is very old. Wait, did I? Trying to say the. Nope, couldn't do it. There's no way I can say a joke without giving away who I'm
No.
thinking of and or throwing them
Well,
under the
it's
bus.
different for everyone. So I always say, well, that can happen to me. You know. So,
Rob, you're not relevant enough for that.
huh? You can be irrelevant and a hack. You know what I mean? You can be an irrelevant hack. That's where that
Yeah.
term hack came from, by the way. It's artists who just crank shit out and don't even give a fuck.
Uh,
You've lost the soul. And they go, well, gotta earn a living, gotta earn a living. You're like, yeah, you gotta earn a living, dude. Absolutely. That being said, once you've attained the fucking living, you know what I mean? There's a point where you're just like cranking too much shit out. Let me
yeah.
give you an example because when it comes down to saying it about artists, it can turn personal. Imagine you're getting The Mandalorian, the TV show, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you love The Mandalorian. You're like, this fucking show is awesome,
Which I do.
right? I love the show. Now let's say next month there's 6 more Mandalorian shows, and each one's a different Mandalorian, right? And they're like, this Mandalorian thing worked. Now we're doing a show based on all these Mandalorians, and they're coming out every month. You're gonna get a new show based on a Mandalorian. You'd fucking get tired of it pretty quick, right? And it's not
Oh
that they're
yeah.
doing shows based on other Mandalorians. It's that they're just churning shit out, right? No soul. So, I mean, there are economic realities to working, and but once you've achieved a certain level of economic success, you can, restraint, means you don't fucking just produce 7 million fucking. Okay, remember when Image came out and they kept putting out books that they never get past issue 1, but they kept making new issue 1s? And you were just like, what is, I mean, I want new books, I want these new worlds, but pick something. You know what I mean? To stop giving me tons of new issue 1s that never get past issue 1 or 2 and they just disappear. And it was because they were selling a shitload of books. And so some dudes decided to just put as many out there and rake in on those number 1s. Same thing too when you see a book have a little too many variant covers. I like variant covers. 79 of them, not a good idea, man. Was it the Dark Knight 3 that had like 100 fucking variant covers? It's ridiculous. So it's too many. All right, let's see if I can. This is nitpicking. Let's see if I can get to the blood and we can wrap this up. All right, so this is where I decided to add blood. That picture of Spawn, by the way, was me explaining to people how I created textures. I gave them the shorthand of it. I'm not getting into that now. Basically, what I did is I took in scans of my old Spawn comics and started creating textures to where my textures made a clean version of the Spawn comics, which I have the digital versions. That he had something where you could buy like all the Spawn comics digitally for like on a humble bundle for like $50. So I got all 300 or 296 fucking issues for like $300. But they're the digital copies. They're 100% clean from the source. So then I took my scans and then I had the clean version and I kept texturing it up until it looked like the scan. You see what I'm saying? Like that's how I reverse engineer my text. And then that's where I started. So what I did here is I blobbed in this blood and then I'm drawing in the blood using the lasso tool over that initial drawing, and it's also stroking the edge. So the stroke is a dark red, and the color is filling it with the red color.
That's cool. Gives it a nice 3D effect.
Yeah, I mean, it looks
solid.
Yeah, it's solid. So this will be me tracing these things. And again, this was not an idea I had when I first started. But I'm like, it needs blood.
Is there blood in the game?
A ton of blood, bro. Like blood everywhere. So I'm like, yeah, it needs some blood. And this image needed something to pop that doesn't exist elsewhere. So when you do things like this, if you're going to add something to your art that doesn't already exist in the art, make sure you limit it to one part of the drawing. Don't fucking make everything on him. Like if I went and went blood on him, blood on his chest, blood on the axe, blood on the dude behind, that's not it. Find a place to put it. Don't put it everywhere. And it seems like basic advice, but I'm telling you, you forget this shit when you're working on stuff.
Right.
When you're in the middle of it, Brandon, you just like I knew that. It's kind of like watching a trivia show. Like you watch a trivia show and you're like, I know those fucking answers. And then the people who get it wrong are like, I knew that, but they don't know it in the moment. Because when you're in the moment, you're like, what was that shit? I can't think. Why can't I think? So then when people tell you, you could have done this blood thing, there's no blood, you're like, you fucking get this far. All the things I'm telling you that you got to do, I'm thinking about while I'm working. Bounce lights, you know what I mean? Emotion, the fucking drawing, the shapes, the way I want to do this. Then I get to this part and I'm like, well, it needs something else. That's to self-edit, bro, is fucking the hardest thing there is to do as a professional artist. To be able to look at your art and go, it needs something, or it needs less, or needs whatever it needs, edit. I mean, that's what I love about having an art director, because I can just turn something in and he'll be like, it needs this or that. I don't have to make that call. But when I'm working on my own art, I have to fucking do that,
Right.
And so like when people go, it'd be really great if you were like an art director on a game. And I'm like, I don't think so. You know what I mean? I know the guy who has that job and he's a fucking pro. So here's a trick. So I've drawn this stuff over here, and then what I've done is I've selected the blood, copied the lines that would be right there. Tried to add a little bit of that line detail in. And then now I'm taking that blood, I've put it in a folder, and I'm changing the folder to a multiply or burn to tie it to the art. So when you're doing layers that have layer effects, you can't change a lot of the, like if this has a layer effect, so it's creating color and stroke. If I turn this into, it won't have a layer effect. If I want that to be a dodge or overlay, it won't. But if you put it into a folder, you can do a layer effect that way. Does that make any sense? And I wanted to show this stuff underneath the blood. So the way to do that is to, it's a complicated thing.
Yeah.
I sort of understand it's a little complicated, but if you're creating things with layer effects and you want them to also have layer effects, you have to put them in a folder and change the folder's layer effects to get that effect. You know what? When you get to the point where you need to do it, you're going to go, oh, now I understand. Right? So it's kind of hard to understand if you don't know what I'm talking about. But the long story short is I need this blood to have the lighting that I've already done that's underneath it. So I need that blood to be like a multiply. In order for that to work, I have to, well, that's what I tried. We'll see how I get there. Yeah, so I get there. So, so in order to do that, I have to put in a folder, turn that to multiply. I can't just turn that layer to multiply. And then once I get there, I have to paint on top of it to make it look more three-dimensional because it's falling too into the drawing. This is what happens when you add shit on top of your art
Right.
after the fact. Like if you had this all planned out, I would have just rendered it straight out. But I'm adding
Right.
this after the fact, so you know, here we go. Chunky blood. You were asking me if I ever over rendered something,
Yes.
and I could tell you, man, it's the last cover I ever did for Tom. This chick on a pole or something. What wasn't the last cover? It was the last cover I did when I ever airbrushed like that, and that Zenoscope kind of wannabe J. Scott Campbell
Right.
look. That, and it was because he wanted that realistic airbrushing. I just kept adding shit. I'm like, this just looks like dog shit. I hate every bit of it.
Well,
We're at an hour and a half. Well, we'll watch the blood. It's good for you to see this shit anyway, because
oh yeah, I love it.
but now it looks a little bit more like he's off to do something. All right, so when I add the blood, it makes it look like he's walking a little more, you know? Because he's like, I'm off to go fucking kill some shit. Here we go.
Still cool though. Like it definitely adds that dynamic craziness to the piece. Like it was cool before when he's walking with the sword, but now it's like, oh, he just messed some shit up. Like he just went to town.
He's like, I got my Popeye's chicken sandwich.
Oh man,
I
people
got
go
it the
crazy
weekend it
over
came
there.
out, bro. And I'm like, smells like feet. Kyle disagrees with me because I don't think it smells like feet. I'm like, what the fuck are you eating, dude?
I have not had one. I don't care to have one, but I wonder how dated this reference will be. But for those that don't know, people are going crazy over a Popeye's chicken sandwich, like literally fighting employees to get one. So that is the joke of this guy just went to town to get a chicken sandwich.
This is me
People
trying
fighting
to.
over a chicken sandwich.
This is me trying to see if I can add a little bit of an emboss layer to get away from
Uh-huh.
rendering some of this stuff and see how that looks. I don't remember if I kept it or not, or any of it. I may have thrown a little bit on top. Yeah, so I think I turned it down to like 60%. So I have those little painted highlights that are imperfect, but I threw a little bit of a emboss layer over it so I get a little bit of that depth without having to fucking manually go and airbrush all that shit. This really should have been figured out in the roughy stage. If I can be critical of anything, is I should have stumbled upon the blood thing in the roughy stage. And now I'm selecting the sword and just airbrushing a little bit of like tint. That needs to be darkened. It's too glowy. Let's see if I darken it. I do! Yeah, set it to multiply so it stains. So I'll stain a little bit of his hand. Trying to stain, like it's a little bit on his other hand. It's a little bit on those rags. Like, and I'm erasing a little bit out just because I don't want to turn his whole hand glowy red. You know, like I don't want to do that. And then we do a little bit of rim line on the blood, pop it forward. And it ends up looking a little bit more painted than it really is. It's kind of like a trick.
Yeah, it's the little things that, just make a piece stand out even more.
I think though, you can look at someone's art sometimes and be like, you can sometimes see more rendering than actually exists, right? When you see the final image, you think, I mean, we really painted that thing, and you're like, not really, not
Right.
really. This is why I try to never finish something and then immediately post it on Instagram and say it's done. Like when I think it's done, I try to give myself a full day to fucking sit on it because I'm gonna see something that needs some kind of level of adjustment. And I don't want it to explain to fucking clients. So here's another one. I want to get some details in the blood, so I'm going to manually draw in all of these little highlights with the lasso tool. I'll probably tap the key to refine edge. Yep, there's a refine edge. And then I'll airbrush in some little coagulation spots.
Ooh, fancy.
And then I can just draw little other ones in there. Just add a little of that texture. Some quickly drawing. Airbrush in, airbrush in. And you add a little fluctuation just by drawing in little round spots. So I'm not manually painting that shit in. I'm just drawing, refining, airbrush, draw, refine, airbrush, draw, refine, airbrush. And so we're like, what are your brushes? I'm like, largely the lasso tool. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
That always
honestly,
throws people off. They're like, wait, lasso tool? And you're like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I get a lot of work done with that thing. It was mapping the refine edge, the contraction. So I have 3 buttons I was saying before. I have the refine edge, I have the feathering, and then I have contract. What that means is every time I draw something, I can tap it and it contracts the selection by 1 pixel. So I tap it 3 times, it goes down 3 pixels. And that's how I can get little extra highlights without manually drawing them if I don't need to. Every time you contract, though, it sharpens the lines back up, so I got to do another refine edge if I want to keep them softer. So if you feathered an edge and contracted, when it contracts, it's going to be a hard edge again. You have to refeather it. Now at this point, I'm like, is it done, Rob? Can I just stop? Like, where? At what point? I'm just like,
Right. Rob's just like, and you'll walk away and come back to a piece, right? And maybe mess with it.
yeah. Well, I can already tell you one of the things I'll do is you see on his arm the blue is going into the line. That looked great when I didn't have that 2D rim light, but I'll go back and change that blue to the color of his skin. See where his shoulder and his elbow is? The blue's going into the line, the thick line. But because the rim light's in the way, it looks weird. So I'll fix that. And I still have to like quickly draw a background. I do that like in 3 seconds though. So
Oh, show off.
yeah, actually, I draw with the lasso tool. Yeah, I don't know how to. And now I'm adding a little bit of splatter brushes, right? That sells the blood. So set that to multiply, and then select the sword, and then add a little bit of that splatter. Boosh. It's like how much? There you go.
It's too much, Rob. Too much.
It's like getting that toothbrush out and just over splattering your art.
I've done that many times.
You're like, damn it, I can't take it back now. All right, let's see if I get to the background. I can't remember if I even recorded it, so let's see. I'm gonna bounce. I think I airbrushing a little bit of that blood bounce light up in there. A little bit of, just a little bit. And then I airbrush some of the green on his back leg to reseed it. So, and then I fix these arms right up in here. See? Fixing that. Now let's see if I, and then I turn it on and off, on. Yeah, I like the blood. If I didn't like it, I would have deleted it. All that to
Right.
delete. I've done that.
Oh, I believe it.
I'm like, nah, it's not working. Then I throw the stroke over that blood, so it's also stroked. That was a little bit of a pain. And then let's see if I do the background. I'm skipping ahead here, folks. Oh, there's a little bit of color back there behind him. This is that thing where I told you can draw around in here and then airbrush in sort of a neutral color, and that just pops it forward. And it looks like that little bit of dark rim around it makes it look like there's more there than is there. Does that make sense? I don't know. It's hard to describe that part. It's
Yes.
you'll know when you get there, and then airbrushing in. Look, this is fun, drawing in the little yellow highlights on this stash. I saved that for last because I knew it would be fun.
It's your dessert.
Yeah, for real. Look, it pops it right forward. And now I'm going to draw highlights. So I'll draw this, refine it, airbrush, and then I'll airbrush in a softer highlight back there to pop that forward. All right, let's see if I can skip ahead. Oh, look, glows. Glows are down here on an overlay layer. They change.
Hey, Crusher, longtime fan of all of us, says, enjoy listening to you guys chat and do art while I'm doing my own art.
I appreciate it, Crush. Go support my Patreon, my Gumroad. Oh, wait. I don't have any of that shit. You know what I'm going to get set up, though? I got to get set up Ko-fi.
What is that? People buy you coffee?
It's a tip that it's in the form of a coffee. Like, they can tip. So, like $2. I like that idea.
Does it actually go towards coffee, or you just get the $2?
In my case, it goes towards coffee. It can go toward art supplies, but yeah, it could go toward art supplies if I want to. But
Does that mean I'll finally get $1
no.
for all my hard work?
No. You spent all year drawing like 2 pages. I've yet to see. So let's not talk about your hard art.
Every time you say it, it's gone from like 1 week, 2 months, 4 months. Now it's been a year.
It's been all year waiting on like 2 pages. So here's just a little extra details of surface highlights. So even though there's shadow, I'm highlighting some of those edges, right? I'm trying not to overly like draw the cheek muscles and stuff, just popping that stuff a little forward and then throwing some glows back in there just to get it a little colorful, and then I tone it down. Like every time I add glows, I overdo it. So I like it, and then I turn it down 75% because I'm like, or 270 to 60%. Because I'm like, I like that, but I know I overdid it. I
Right.
got a little color fiend in me. I'll go crazy. Shit'll turn to pinata colors and shit. And these little tassels, I'm gonna airbrush or sharp. Am I darken them? I do something to pop them out. We'll find out in a second. There we go. I darken. How did I even record the background? I want to know. I'm curious to know. Like I may have done
Well,
that on my own.
yeah, I don't remember seeing it,
Now
but
this is me painting in little highlights using the oil tool just to get that extra little surface. So this is that extra stuff I told you that you were like, oh, you do those little extra renderings. I do, but I try to save it for last because if you do that up front, you're going to spend all day rendering details that don't affect the
I
majority of the
gotcha.
image, right?
Makes sense.
So these are the kinds of things that there's no time to do in sequential comics. Good for covers, not good for interiors. So I'll go here. This is an overlay again with like a light cream color, and I'm thinking that looks cool. Done, right? Nope, got some trees to do. Got some trees to do. There's not much time left, so like there's literally 10 minutes left on this video. So I'm like, did I get it done in 20 minutes or 40 minutes? 40 minutes. Yeah, I did. I got this whole thing done in about 30, 40 minutes. So here we
Impressive.
go. I take that background, I line it up, and look, I'm just tracing over my roughy, right? And then I'm airbrushing in, sampling those colors. Yeah, here we go. This will be fun to watch. For me, because I'm like, huh. Impressive. Quick trees. Okay. And I've feathered those edges, and I've added way more texture on the background. I duplicated my retro textures, and on the background, it's just affecting it like twice as much as everything else. That's how it has all that weird blotchiness going on back there, which I like
Uh-huh.
because I wanted to add more to the background because I don't want to put in all that effort. So, so it's all that purple texturing back there. All right, now I'm gonna draw these little leaves using the lasso tool.
I was say draw or lasso tool.
Oh, I'm drawing it with the lasso tool.
So quick and efficient.
And then I'll refine edge and fill in. Watch, it's so simple. And then I'll duplicate some over and shrink them down so I can create a couple more. No, that didn't work. I had to manually draw it. I tried to cheat, but it didn't work. So I'll draw some little ones back there. I'll probably fill those with a separate color so they're lighter. I'm guessing. This is, I forget. I have no memory of doing this. So let's see what I do. Lighter color, Rob? Lighter color! Look at that. I knew it.
Yay!
I knew it. And then the grass, I'll just draw the top parts and then airbrush just the tops so they blend into the background. So super simple.
Looks cool though.
Yeah, it's super effective. I've been working on this for the comic. And I erase the bottoms so they blend in. And I'll stroke those front leaves. Adds a little bit of color, make it a dark blue or saturated blue. I can't remember. Do I keep that stroke? I remember doing it. I don't remember if I kept it.
Right.
I have no memory, folks, like Gandalf. Like, oh, and then I'll change that grass to fit the grass I currently have going now with the color because it's a different color than I intended.
There's two Robs. There's regular Rob and there's Art Rob, like a symbiote. It just takes over. Rob blacks out. He's not in control. 4 hours go by.
Art
And then
Rob's
the art's
called you
done.
at 2 a.m. to yell at you. So
Yes.
I've told my wife, I'm like, there's another voice. There's another me that comes out. And you know what I mean? When I get my ideas or direct. Yeah, it's.
It could be, you've called me to yell at me. You've called me to do a podcast. You've called.
Mm-hmm.
Rob will call me at 1 a.m. What are you doing? I'm like, I'm going to bed.
I knew you were up.
We got to do a podcast.
Yeah. And we got to do it now. You wanted to be a celebrity. So there we go. That's it.
Yeah.
That background got done super fast. Told you. Oh, well,
Pretty.
These corners, I probably didn't need these corners, but they were in the original thumbnail. I kept not drawing. Check that. I had to draw this fucking bullshit grass 3 times because it wasn't fucking like. The first one was the best, but I lost it because when I got done drawing it, it just diagonally linked back. It didn't make the selection. There's me just drawing grass. What grass tool do you have? It's called lasso tool. Draw fucking weird grass pieces. Simple gradient. Then can I duplicate this? Trying to find out how to get a foreground level of stuff without actually putting much effort in. Oh, look, I fucked that up there too. God damn it, I gotta do it again. Keep doing it. That's when you know you're at the end of something. You're like, I want it to end. And you keep making simple mistakes and shit. You know, you ever make a bunch of those you ever make a bunch of those simple mistakes over and over again? It's kind of like at the end of a football game when people just keep fucking doing bullshit penalties and fouls and shit. You're like, come on.
Yeah, let it be over.
Yeah. Then I thought maybe I can get out of doing those foreground pieces. I just add these little glows. And I'm like, no. No, I'm going to have to do it. If I don't show this part, people will be like, why wouldn't you put the glows in? I saw it in the final image. It's not in. You're hiding the glow thing. No, there it is. Fill a layer up with black, set it to color or linear dodge, and you're going to get some nifty glows. Really great ways to do like streaked lighting effects too. Bokeh, they call that, you know, and like the light blooms. You can do that. There's a signature. Come on, I added the. Did I cut out the I remember there being a foreground. Huh, maybe I didn't put the foreground. Maybe I was like, you know what? It's not working. I would be proud of myself. I could easily stop this video and look, but I'm just curious.
No, yeah, just keep it going.
My signature was low res. I had to put in a high res one. Yeah. And then I'm like, it's standing out too much. I know. When people are watching you stream art, they're like, how long are you going to spend on your signature, Rob? As long as it fucking takes. I don't like my signature to stand out too much on the piece.
Right.
Like
you want it to be almost part of the art.
That's how I feel about it.
Well, I liked when artists would maybe do it like, let's say if it's like in a city and there's like a debris and it's on a piece of ratty paper or on a trash can or like it's graffiti, you know, sometimes things like that are cool. But if it's part of the piece like this where you're making it the same as the blood colorish looking,
I think I'd select the background. It's gonna be more greenish.
Oh, okay.
Or yellow. Like it's gonna tie.
It'll still blend. It's not gonna just be like over the whole fucking foot or bottom of the whole piece.
It's not. I'm not gonna Grant Morrison this shit. You know what I'm saying, Brandon? You know what I'm talking about?
Was it Grant Morrison? Yeah.
I assure you, I know the story.
Yeah. Fuck that guy. For those that don't know, real quick, I went to this Vegas expo thing that cost a lot of money. And I was literally the first person in the whole line of like probably 2,000 people to get a Jim Lee sketch. Okay, first one. I was the first guy. And Jessica could have got one, but she got nervous because she wasn't on the line. She wasn't in the line, but I was like, just get a sketch, but she didn't. But anyways, I get a Wolverine sketch, him smoking a cigar, which is rare because you never see Wolverine smoking anymore. But he used to love cigars when Jim Lee would draw them. And I'm walking past Grant Morrison. I'm like, hey, can you sign in this book that I have? And he signs over Wolverine's hair. So it looks like Wolverine has a really long, wild hair on top of his head. And I have yet to since even look at the book or sketch. I think it's somewhere on my shelves. I don't know. Probably.
You could send it to me.
Let me see. No, you'll post it on your page.
I could probably fix it.
Probably.
I have the ability to do that.
With some acrylic.
Yeah, you'd fuck it up, but I think I could probably fix it.
Maybe I will do that too. Or maybe it just adds to the value. Hey, Jim Lee sketch, Grant Morrison signature. What? Twofer. Who doesn't want that off eBay for $50?
This is the one I left over his dead body after I murdered.
I know. I literally, I forgot to tell you that I literally said, "Are you fucking serious?" in the middle of the showroom. Like after he did it, I go, "Are you fucking serious?" And he looked at me like, "What did you say?" I'm like, "Yeah, you just signed over Jim Lee's sketch." Like, bro, like, are you serious? He's like, "Well," and then the other guy's like, "We got to go to a panel." I'm like, "What a dick." Fucking dick. Wonder if I could reach here with the mic still on.
That's it. That's all there is. All right, so that's the piece, and this is the final one. So that's all it took to get from there to here, and you can see all the.
Hey Rob, do you want to know the name of that con was that I went to?
It was Vegas Con.
No, it was called the Morrison Con.
Well, that's why.
Yeah, I just realized that as I look at the book right now, I see it. I forgot the damn name. That's how pissed I was after.
Let's turn the textures off. So this is without the textures. This is with the textures on. That's with the textures off. Yeah, makes a giant difference. And that's it. That's all I got, Brandon. We did this shit for 2 hours.
Yay!
Oh, 2 hours. We saw a lot. We learned a lot. We learned a lot of stuff that I could easily charge you $10 on a Gumroad that people then steal and put up on one of those GitHub sites, and I never see any money from them. So I figured, why not just do it for free? That's it. That's it for this piece. I've talked enough about Wulverblade. I never want to draw Wulverblade.
I don't want to look at it anymore.
That's how I feel. That's how I feel about you.
Hell yeah.
That got mean. Brandon, you're cutting out. Your whole thing is cutting out. So let's see if I can hit. Okay, Brandon, can you talk?
Yes.
All
yes.
Right, you're much better now. All right. So I'm gonna head out of here. Is there anything else?
If I learned anything today is don't let Morrison sign your book.
Don't let Morrison sign. Let's see if the ending works. Let's see if this works. It worked. Don't let Grant Morrison sign your word.